Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody!
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city sand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices like the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channels and on X. And the slow death could continue with the New York Mets today as the Mets face the Cubs, their final 6 games of the season. And boy, do the Mets need to win. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, they need to win, and they need to win in a big way. I mean, ideally, over the next 6 games. First of all, I think we should just get to it. I know you mentioned it yesterday, as part of your off-day show. They don't control their own destiny anymore. All that out the window, and that's unfortunate. So we now have to rely on both the Pirates and the Brewers to go ahead and hold the Reds at bay, and then we have to of our own business. So there is now 2 conflicting things going on at the same time. So that is what it is. And if the Mets intend to play this series, just straight up like they did against the Nationals, they might as well just not even go and travel to Miami to play that last series. They might as well not even go. So I am thoroughly disappointed in this team. Thoroughly disappointed. There's no other even words that can come out of my mouth to even try to explain, because I haven't talked to you all. I know Rob has since the National Series, but I haven't. There's no there's no other word. It's just disappointment. It's misery. It's failed expectations. That's what it is, Rob. So, the Mets are going to have to take care of business in Chicago. I'm sure the Cubs would love to play spoilers. As we talked about in the National Series, all the streams that we did, these teams would rather see the Reds probably make the playoffs than the Mets. It's a league-wide thing to not have the Mets, especially the same team that signed the biggest free agent on the market, get to the playoffs. So that's what the Mets are competing against. We are going to know very quickly what level of urgency, what level of care this team has right now after that debacle at home. And we're going to find out tonight starting at 7:40 p.m.
I mean, Mendoza's showing some desperation and urgency, right? I mean, look at the lineup. I mean, you got Brandon Nimmo playing center field. You got Starlin Marte playing left field. He's not playing anymore. I don't like Nimmo in center field, but let's be honest. Isn't he the best option right now compared to anybody else? Do you want to see Mullins? Do you want to see Siri in center field? No. Right, they're not hitting number 1, and their defense has been. And I don't like Nimmo, and I don't think Nimmo's defense is that good. But at least Nimmo, has more of a chance than any of those other 2 guys. And Marte has been hitting. You got to play him, and you got to get Beatty in the lineup. You got to get Vientos in the lineup, and this is how you're gonna do it. That's it. The only way you get McNeil in the lineup is to DH Vientos, because then you can put Beatty at third. This team needs to score runs. I know the defense has failed to pitch in, and it's like the Nationals scored a ton of runs. The Mets couldn't score enough runs. That has been the problem. And I'm not blaming Mendoza here. You put every available offensive bat that you can in this lineup. Yeah, it might hurt the defense overall, But you know what? A lot of these guys can get to the easy fly balls, can get to, to not make the simple mistakes. The simple mistakes have been happening way too much. And I just think you got to score. You know what? If you got to win the rest of your games 8-7, you have to at this point now. Because I don't trust anybody in this rotation. I trust McLean. That's it. That's all I trust. I don't expect David Peterson to put up zeros tonight. I just don't. I don't know how you feel about it, Chris, but I just don't. You get the possible Cy Young Award winner in Katie Horton tonight, and listen, you don't think the Cubs are pissed? And the Cubs, I felt like laid down against the Cincinnati Reds, and it's so true. The way that have you seen? I don't think the Cubs have been excellent this year by any means, but if I've watched 3 out of the 4 games that they faced the Reds, they look like a team that did not give a fuck about who won them games in Cincinnati. And you'll know real quick if the Cubs really want to beat the Mets or they're just, hanging out for the ride, because it's not like they're automatically in that first wildcard spot. If they have a rough 6 games and the Padres have a good 6 games, they can lose that first wildcard spot and they lose home field advantage. So, they're not playing like a team that they're not playing like a team that should be playing to make sure they secure that first wildcard.
I don't expect any help from any team.
Yeah, I agree.
To get the Mets in the playoffs. I don't. That is just wishful thinking by us fans, and that's wishful thinking by this team to allow this sort of situation to happen. I fully expect the Cubs to now play competent baseball and look like a different version of themselves than they did against the Reds. Yeah, it's going to happen. Like if you are even questioning if that's going to happen, you haven't been watching this organization for long enough. That is what's going to happen. So it's a shame. It's really a shame because the Mets held all the cards, and by some miraculous way, I have no idea how they continue to hold their own destination or their own destiny in their hands, but they did. And now that's all out the window. And we can go back and if we do a season review where we're talking about a team that missed the playoffs, this Mets 2025 team, we can look back at the 2 times the Mets played the Reds, and we can recount all the mistakes they made. The mistakes they made. And the same thing, because the Diamondbacks aren't too far behind, if I'm not mistaken, right? I think it's 1 game that they're back.
And the tiebreakers against either of them, which is even worse.
Exactly. And I remember
not like last year.
I remember vividly where the Diamondbacks had a series at Citi Field against the Mets this year, and the Mets pissed it away. It was a horrible performance.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not even the matchups anymore. It's division records because they tied the season series against each other. So the Mets losing to the Nationals makes that an impossibility of have a possibility of winning the division or your division record better than the Arizona Diamondbacks. It can't happen now because of the 2 out of 3 we lost against the Nationals. That's the other problem. Like, we don't even control our own destiny. Now, again, we win today, the Reds lose today, we control our own destiny again. We'll be up a game. But, I mean, I don't think anybody's going into this game being confident. Look, I'm all on board for Mendoza being desperate with this lineup and where he's positioning these players. I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not mad. Like, how can I be mad at a manager trying to do everything he can because he can't throw a ball, he can't swing a bat, he can't put a glove on. So I'm not mad at Mendoza that the players are throwing the ball around. Like, what coach and manager is going to tell a player, hey, don't do that again? Like, of course they're going to do that. Then these are professionals. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I like the fact that they're doing something different with this lineup and with the positioning of the defensive alignment. I'm okay with it. I don't know what else Mendoza can do. His in-game managerial situations has to be better, in my opinion. I don't think, you take out Pete Alonso or, pinch running and bunting in situations where you have 3 outs with a guy on second to win a ball game and you're bunting a guy over to third. I hate that situation. It's stupid. Swing the bat. I'd rather you swing the bat than bunt and give it out, because the Mets have shown that they've struggled in situations like that, in situational hitting and trying to get a runner from third with less than 2 outs. It's a lot of things. I mean, that National Series was just a debacle. Like, I was so annoyed. Like, I kind of held back yesterday a lot, and people were like, wow, you were crazy yesterday. That wasn't even close, because I still feel that if they play a sound baseball game, they will win. They're good enough to play to win ball games. They are. They can be just as good as any other team that are officially in the playoffs right now or going to be in the playoffs. They are. They are. They just not playing like it because if you just go from the middle of June, how bad they actually were, and you see the series, it's not like they played a sound series and they just got beat by a better team. The Mets lost games because they did not play to their capabilities. And this is going to be the story of the season. If the Mets don't make the playoffs, that's what it's going to be. They did not play to their capabilities all season. And you can blame the lineup the first 2 months. You can blame the pitch in the last 4 months or 3 months of the season. The fact of the matter is, you don't make the playoffs. It's a team effort, not making the playoffs. And that's the overall concern that we all are going to have. And in 7 days, on Monday, when everybody's supposed to be traveling to their destination for a wild card series or possibly, a playoff situation, and we're talking about a season review, well, it's not going to be a pretty, because you know what? It's not just managers possibly could be fired or coaches could be fired. I want a very different looking roster as much as you possibly can. I don't want to bring back the same guys because we're going to be talking about the same thing. This is a losing core. This is a losing franchise that you just can't roll it back and say everything's going to be okay, because that's a dangerous game to play. And you know what? The way Met fans are talking, Chris, and a lot of them were talking about that on yesterday's show on Mets Talk Live, that, bring back Pete Alonso, do this, do little things like that. What are we going to just change a bullpen and bring back Pete Alonso and think everything's going to be okay? Like they gotta do something with this rotation other than just say, the kids are here and throw it back with Senga and Peterson and Mania. That you can't do that. It's a dangerous game to play, and I think you have to, change this roster to a lot more than people are actually talking about, because you can't just change a bullpen and say, we got starters. Like it's not going to work. It was terrible this year. And it's not just about being healthy. These guys have not pitched well. And that's the other problem.
I wish my mind could allow me to even think about this offseason right now. Because if I did, then I would my brain would just turn into like mush, honestly. I can only think about this lineup right here with Marte in left field. At least you get a better outfield with the arm strength.
I think that's what they're thinking.
But the thing is like, I see Mendoza went on the Foul Territory podcast. I'm looking on my X account right now, right? Foul Territory TV Mendoza did an interview with them earlier today. Carlos Mendoza announced Starling Marte will start in left field and Brandon Nimmo will start in center. Mendoza says physically, he's to the point, he's talking about Starling Marte, he's to the point where, hey, we need to push you. So it took relinquishing a playoff spot to need to push Starling Marte, who's making $20 million a year. It took until September 23rd and not the downward spiral at any point over the past few months to make that defensive change. I'm happy they finally figured it out, because I'm so thrilled that I don't have to see Cedric Mullins play baseball today, because he is abysmal. Abysmal.
Terrible.
And Tyrone Taylor's coming back tomorrow. If all else goes well, he's going to be activated tomorrow for game 2 of this series, and they're going to have to make a decision. One of these guys between Siri and Mullins, I bet you they keep Mullins. I guarantee you they keep Mullins.
Oh, yeah.
But Siri has that extra year of controllability or whatever, which was one of the talking points that everybody, Mets fans, us, even when it first happened, the trade went down this past off season about why David Stearns went out and got him. So that's also a factor.
So,
I mean, okay, so if he does, then that could be a thing too, to keep him in the organization. But they're going to want to keep the lefty. They're going to want to keep, bottom line, screw lefty, screw whatever. They're going to want to keep the guy that David Stearns got that in this deadline that has made no impact. That's why they're going to keep him. Yeah. I don't care about lefty. I don't care about whatever else. They're doing it because David Stearns got him at the trade deadline. And if you believe anything else, I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. You might just be a Mets homer at that point. We're not homers. That's one thing that I really want to just get out of the way too about this, is that we told you all, if they do good things this season, we will praise them. And if they fail the expectations that everyone has had, we will call it out for what it is. and it has been a disappointing season, and that's a direct reflection of David Stern. It is. It is a direct reflection of David Stearns. Bottom
Yeah.
line. And I don't want to hear, and I've seen this already on social media, because all the positive Mets fans come out of the hiding that they've been forced to do. Let's be honest. Actually, they weren't even hiding. They've been out in full force saying that everything is going to be okay, just like this team does after they lose each game, continuing to tell this fan base to believe. What are we believing in? We're not believing in you guys that are showing no heart out there, on the field. But now it's supposed to be a David Stearns developmental year for the development of the pitchers that we now have. The same pitchers that would have never came up, by the way, maybe outside of Nolan McLean, if these veterans had done their job.
Right.
If Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, and Clay Holmes, David Peterson, for that matter, and by the way, David Peterson, am I excited to watch him pitch tonight? No, absolutely not. He hasn't provided us 6+ innings since August 19th, that 8 inning performance at Nats Park. So if these veterans did their jobs, none of these guys, I would probably bet, would be on this roster right now. They would go with the veterans, and they would wait till next year to make that decision. So I don't want to hear about development. Are we still in the developmental stages of Brett Beatty? Yes, because he's been bad before this season, so that's by default. But this roster is not anywhere near needing to develop any further when you have the core group of players that you do under contract in Lindor, McNeil, Nimmo, and Alonso that you re-signed, and also adding Juan Soto into that fold. There is nothing that screams or even indicates development. So any Mets fan that is pushing that narrative is lying through their teeth and can't just find it within themselves to criticize David Stearns for once. Everybody that watches my podcast, watches my videos, watches the streams that Rob and I do, of the two of us, who has always praised David Stearns more so than the other. That's been me. But I'm going to sit here and tell you that he has failed the Mets this season. And it's on him. That's the fact of the matter. That's the bottom line, and nobody can change that. Nobody, no matter what they tell you.
I agree, and then this is the problem, right? People are talking about, what were you supposed to do? Trade young pitchers, trade this, trade that. The fact of the matter is, the offseason started the issue with giving you it led to a possibility, because there was always a possibility that you were going to need very good starting pitching, at least one at the deadline, because of just what you did in the offseason. So that's why Stearns is the problem. And again, he ain't going anywhere, and Mendoza's not going anywhere. He's safe. Like, if anybody thinks Mendoza or Stearns is going anywhere, you're nuts. They're not firing somebody or manager after 2 years again. And I talked about this yesterday. Stability matters. And just because we might miss the playoffs, it's not just falling on Mendoza. It has to do a lot with Stearns. Mendoza got the roster that Stearns put together. We used over 46 pitches this year. That's Mendoza's fault? No. That's David Stearns' fault for relying on a guy who has a career 4 ERA, and he told you that he's your ace, and that's Sean Manaea. They told you that Kodai Senga is a co-ace. He's not. And could we get the Kodai Senga, by the way? Did you hear that lovely story that came out today? I don't know if you saw it, but he threw a bullpen, guys. I mean, I don't know. How's that? Everybody's excited, right? Did anybody, he just pitched on Thursday and he threw a bullpen. The Mets are going to wait and see where they are and where he is over the next 2 to 3 days, or 3 to 4 days, they said. So that means if he feels okay and he gives them the okay, because, everything relies on what Kodai Senga says, not what the Mets need, right? The Mets need Kodai Senga to pitch. Make no mistake about it. I can't stand the guy, but you can't tell me in the beginning of the year, this guy's your co-ace, and then you're not telling this guy, get the fuck on the mound. Who is pitching? This is what I don't understand. What does Kodai Senga have naked pictures of David Stearns and Steve Cohen? Seriously, why are they making him dictate everything? He's not injured. He just sucks. I just don't understand it. You're going to tell me we're going to finish the season with Kodai Senga being in the minors for 2 weeks now? Over 2 starts? And he just threw a bullpen, and you're going to wait and see? There is no reason why Kodai Senga should have been pitching these last 2 games of the Cub series, and it's going to be Tong and Sproat, which is okay. But you could have pushed
I
one of
think
these.
they actually said. I think Mendoza actually said that they're moving McLean into Brandon Sproat's spot on Thursday. If I'm
Okay,
not
because
mistaken.
okay, so they switched it up. So okay, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Let's say it's McLean, but like, what is the wait and see approach? Oh, if we lose these, if we lose 2 out of 3, and now we're kind of, we got to win all 3 games against Miami, and we need Cincinnati to lose 2 out of 3, so it's almost impossible to make the playoffs. That's when Kodai Senga is going to go in a non-important game. If they do that, everybody should be fired. That's ridiculous. You cannot. This is not Kodai Senga coming back from injury. This is not Kodai Senga coming back from injury. I talked about this yesterday on Mets Talk Live. I said it. I said, I don't care that Kodai Senga has been bad. You cannot tell me in the beginning of the year that this guy is your co-ace, and now you're telling me that, it's a wait and see approach. You better throw him out there. He's not hurt. He just has not been good. But you can't finish the season with Kodai Senga not pitching the final 3 weeks of the season because he doesn't feel right on the mound. He never said he was injured. He says that his body and his arm is not moving in the same direction. You can't fix that after 2 starts in a bullpen. Then you know what? Don't pitch. Then you shouldn't have pitched the rest of the second half if you felt that way, because all you did was hurt this team. I just don't understand it. Like, this is the problem, Chris. This is the indecisiveness that I cannot stand with David Stearns, where you got to tell a player who is not injured, get on the mound. You cannot finish the season with Kodai Senga not pitching in one of these important games. You just can't. Why is there a wait and see approach? If he's going to pitch game 162, that possibly might not matter. I don't want Kodai Senga back next year. How can you trust a guy like that has been in the minors for 2 weeks and threw a bullpen, I think it was yesterday or today, and you're gonna have a wait and see approach? This decision should have been made, and I said it. They should have made the decision on the off day yesterday. Make the decision. Is he pitching or not? It just doesn't make sense, Chris. I don't understand the logic in the wait and see approach. What are we waiting for? Like, I don't want him pitching in a game that might not mean nothing. And it's possible that some of those Miami games might not mean anything, because if we get beaten down by the Cubs, it's game over. So and that's when they're going to pitch Kodai Senga, and you're going to make me feel okay about that. And you're going to tell me, oh, well, look at the rotation. Look who we got. No, I just don't want to hear it. I really don't.
I don't think anything that happens between now and the end of this season in the next 6 games is going to, for a fan that's objective of the Mets, it's not going to persuade or, that anybody in this fan base that this rotation is okay moving into the offseason, right? Yeah, we've got the young guys that are going to be in year 2, or I guess you should say year 1, right? But I guess their second season technically. And then Christian Scott. Okay. Clay Holmes, are we still going to expect to see a jump from him? You know what I mean? David Peterson, what's going to happen with him? I like the problem of why I can't see this team doing anything different in their rotation is because they now have a situation, unless they get creative with trades and ship Kodai Senga out somewhere, right? He's going to be in his last year of his contract, so it's a 1-year deal for anybody who gets him. You're going to have to create roster space to bring somebody new in. You know what I mean?
And that's
because
fine.
Even then you'll have to move Sean Manaea into the bullpen full time, right? You're going to just say, hey, the hell with you starting any games for us anymore. And even though we paid you like a starter, that's the problem. A lot of these contracts end up coming back, to slap the Mets in the face. Brandon Nimmo's a couple of years ago. Marte's ended up slapping the Mets in the face as well when that was first given. Well, not first given, but the second year and onward of that deal that he signed. Manaea, it's on the track of this horrific season to be a bad 3-year deal, even though I wanted him back. I'll say that up front and foremost. You could just go all across the board. Senga, clearly, but, everybody was happy with Senga, and he did really well in 2023 in a lack of a pressure situation, lack of a pressure season. He did really well. So we didn't really see him in meaningful games, unfortunately, when he was killing it. And then the injuries started to accumulate. Who would have thought with a 30-plus-year-old pitcher that would happen? I don't know. I just don't really have. David Stearns has to get creative to make roster spots for this starting rotation. And if his philosophy isn't, if he's not planning on changing his philosophy, then what we have right now is what you're going to see. And, we're going to get sold this crap of year 2 of these guys as a collective unit is going to be a lot better than year 1. So until I actually see it, now I'm playing the let's wait and see. I'll believe it when I see it. I believed in David Stearns to do something impactful with the rotation at the deadline if he was choosing not to do so in the offseason. Now I don't believe anything about this guy with the rotation. I don't. I don't believe anything that he says or he says he's going to do about this rotation regarding his philosophy. I have to wait and see. And so until I get the notification from Passan that he brings on another pitcher that's actually worthwhile, no, I'm not talking about a guy like converting another reliever into a starter like they did with Holmes. And no, I'm not talking about, a guy like Griffin Canning, even though he would have served this team really well right now if he was still able to be here, I think, even though he was starting to fizzle out just a little bit earlier this season. I'm not talking about those types of moves. I'm talking about impactful moves in the rotation, which we have not seen yet with David Stearns, even though in 2024 it was a quote unquote success story because he got the best version of Manaya and Severino in that year. I'm not buying it. We'll see what happens in the offseason, but the Mets are in real trouble this season. And like I said, and like you said, nobody should be expecting for the Cubs to just roll over and die like they did against the Reds in that series. Nobody should be expecting that. They've got one of their better pitchers on the mound today and in game 3 in Shota Imanaga. And this is going to be a really hard fought series that the Mets, if they, again, the mistakes that happened against the Nationals in that series when you knew it was a must sweep, like we both all said, must win or must sweep at the very minimum. When you have those kind of lapses, especially defensively all across the board, you don't deserve to make the playoffs. This team doesn't deserve anything about this 2025 MLB postseason. We are just hoping that they get in. Nothing has been convincing. And I wouldn't be surprised if they go 2-4 over the next 6. That's how I feel about this team right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, yeah, I just don't understand. Draymond's like, is Senga better than Sproat or Tong? That is not the point. That is not the point I'm trying to make. When your organization puts your rotation together in the offseason and says that Manaya and Senga are your co-aces, and this guy is not hurt. Again, he is not hurt. If he is hurt, then say that. Don't tell me that he's going to the minor leagues to fix stuff and it's 3 weeks already. Like, we're going on 3 weeks here. Like, it's not about Sproat or Tong. If Kodai Senga is so good that they're telling us that he is still very good, because that's all you hear from this Mets organization. Kodai Senga is God to this organization for some reason. They give him everything he wants. He's the hardest guy to come back from injury when he's in rehab. He's a guy that needs 6 or 7 days off every time he starts. He pitched once on 5th day rest, and that was because they went through it during a 16-game stretch, and he was not good. You got to throw him in. You got to throw him in one of these games. You have to. It's not about who's good or who's better. You can't trust most of these guys in the rotation anyway. Kodai Senga needs to throw. He has to. It just doesn't make sense. Like the Mets. I'm telling you, the Mets are going to do this. I don't think if a game matters in Miami, Kodai Senga is not pitching. I'm telling you that right now. They're gonna play this shit like it's gonna be the biggest. I mean, they might as well make posters. Hey, Kodai Senga pitching game 162. Mets are out of it. Get excited, because they're gonna pull that bullshit next year, saying that Kodai Senga is a big part of this rotation, and he should not be. And again, how can you trust the guy in the top of your rotation that you can't say? And this was the ending of DeGrom's career too, when we needed him down that stretch in 2022, and he never came back because he was going to be a free agent. He came back later in the year than expected, and you know what? It hurt this team. When they were falling apart at the seams the final month and a half of the season, DeGrom was slowly coming back. Oh, I got to feel right. My arm angle, all this nonsense. He was coming back from injury, but it was all about mechanics and all that nonsense that apparently, one of the best pitchers in baseball couldn't figure out. And then we all knew what the case was. That's why a lot of Mets fans loved Jacob deGrom, but they were pissed off during that season because we needed him. The same thing goes for Kodai Senga. We don't have enough good pitchers to say, hey, Kodai Senga, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. We'll give you all the time you need. And it might be too late by that time. It doesn't make sense. It's stupid. The philosophy is wrong. It is not right. And there is no Met fan that should trust Kodai Senga if he doesn't pitch the rest of the season, or he pitches in a game that might not matter in the final games of the year. That's the biggest problem. That's the problem that I have. Not that he might not pitch well. I mean, let's be honest. Peterson's still pitching. Is he going to pitch well? Right? How about this? Let me ask you something, Chris. This is a crazy question. It's about today's game. If I says that Kodai Senga was available, would you rather have David Peterson or Kodai Senga today? Now, we don't care about matchups. We don't care about lefty righty at all. It's just a matter of it's you're thinking about it, right?
I am thinking about it,
Who
honestly,
has to swing and miss stuff?
because I don't believe in David. Yeah, I don't believe in David Peterson.
That's
And honestly, the first start always coming back from, like, I don't care what they do in AAA. I don't care about those numbers. Like, the first start back, I would hope that a guy has a chip on his shoulder, so to speak. So honestly, I know, as crazy as it sounds, I might go with Kodai Senga just because I'm done with David Peterson, man. I'm just
well,
mentally
that's the
checked out
problem.
of
Like
whatever
that's the
he's
thing.
doing.
Like Kodai Senga had more than enough days off to pitch today. Like, he was set up to pitch today in regular rest. Like, this is the problem with Kodai Senga and the New York Mets. They continue to They continue to appease this guy in any means necessary, and they don't use him when they actually need him the most. It just doesn't make sense. Like, if you want to push David Peterson back into the Miami series, whatever. Like, it's like I just don't understand the logic. It just doesn't make sense. Like, we know that David Peterson doesn't have swing and miss stuff. At least Kodai Senga has that potential. We always talk about the potential of the swing and miss stuff, right? With any pitcher, bullpen, starter, that's important. And you know what? Why not piggyback Kodai Senga and David Peterson? How that's a crazy idea, right? We know how good David Peterson was coming out of the bullpen last year. Why not just start Kodai Senga and piggyback David Peterson today? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, then you're asking for double trouble if these guys are both bad.
I understand that, but you know what? You did it with Manaea and Holmes, and it failed. So, for the second time, I know they didn't give up a ton of runs, but I think you need to try it. Like, you got to get Kodai Senga. What are you going to piggyback with Tong or Sproat or McLean? Like, I just don't get it. I really don't.
Yeah, I mean, think about why we're having this conversation in the first place. This whole, piggyback tag team conversation in the first place. That's really the main question that every Mets fan and David Stern should be pondering about, why he has to do this to a rotation that he was so confident in the offseason that was built, and then double down on it at the deadline by not acquiring, more help for them and relying on these guys to be deadline additions. Oh, wait, no, we're just going to go with the rookies and see how they do in meaningful baseball games. And so, it's just a whole failed plan, so to speak. Like, the plan was fine until it wasn't, right? And then you had to make a decision about what to do at the deadline. And it's just a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda with this team and David Stearns, unfortunately. So, I don't have any, I already said this, I don't have any confidence in David Peterson. He's looked defeated. He's thrown a plethora of more innings than he ever has had in his career. This is by far, like, we're talking about like over 40 innings, I think even approaching 60, 40, 50, 60, somewhere around there, innings more than he's ever thrown in his career. And the last month has shown that. Like, it's shown that this is a pitcher that is going into uncharted territory of what he's done in his career thus far. And just relying on that is not a recipe for success. Ask the Mets and how Sean Manaea did in the playoffs last season, right? He had a great regular season and then fell apart in the playoffs because that was uncharted territory for him, unfortunately.
And yet you ran it back with a lot of the guys that are in uncharted territory, and you wonder why we're in the mess we're in.
Yep. So it's one of those things where, again, with where these pitchers are at, we're now relying on veterans that are pitching on fumes, which is crazy because, I mean, like, Clay Holmes for sure, David Peterson for sure, Sean Manaea should be very healthy and well rested, right? He should be. I mean, I know he has the loose bodies or whatever that report. They might clean that up in the offseason, but with the amount of rest that he's had this entire season, he should be ready to go. But the production just hasn't been there. They decided to flip flop the tandem that they had between Holmes and Sean Manaea, and they didn't do as well the first time around, or the second time around, I should say, because Sean Manaea got off to a really poor start. They didn't give up like that many collective runs because they just did well after that, but it was a really bad start, and that's why I'm like, Sean Manaea just seems like the perfect bullpen arm. We were even talking about that, right? Where like Sean Manaea just seems like he has comes out there with a different type of edge, coming out of the bullpen than being a starter.
Yeah,
And so
he does.
why, what are we in the business of, especially when the national series was happening, like, are we in the business of really getting cute and creative and seeing what combinations work right now when you're trying to even just make it to the postseason while you control your own destiny? Like, that didn't make sense. And I told you in the pregame before that game happened, I said, if this game is a loss, right? And if one of these guys doesn't look the same, and Sean Manaea didn't for the most part, then we're going to be talking about why did Mendoza and Stearns decide to flip these guys between starting and bullpen rather than the first time around. And
Yeah.
they ended up losing the game. So I don't know. It's just like
Yeah.
this change is different than that change, though. Like, I like
Yeah.
this change in the lineup. I didn't like that change in the
I
rotation.
agree.
So
We know why, because the national they had they had lefties going. That was the reason. They have more lefties in the lineup because, again, they care about matchups when it appeases them. When they think they're smarter than everybody else, they do it. Like, how many times have we said this year that last year it was so much about matchups, it annoyed us, but it worked the majority of the time last year. We were annoyed by it, and we came on the post game saying, "Oh, well, it worked." So I guess they're doing they're doing the right thing. They were making all the right calls. This year, it seems like they're using their gut more and analytics at the same time with matchups, and it's like, why the sudden change? Why the difference of philosophy when you were successful for nearly 4 months last year? I don't understand. That's why I don't understand the plan. There is no plan. Like, if you believe there's a plan, you are the biggest fool that David Stearns wants you to be. I told you about his propaganda and his speeches that just, it's air to me. I don't listen to that guy anymore. He makes no sense when he talks at all, because he's going to spin this so well that there's going to be too many goddamn Met fans that are going to be excited about what he says for next year. They'll be mad in the beginning because, you're going to be mad if you don't miss the playoffs in an high expectation year. Oh, yet again, in Mets history, high expectations is a big fail. We have to understand that his philosophy is very, very, it's a polarizing philosophy that is either going to work or go really bad. There is no in between. That's the problem with his philosophy. That is the reason why the Brewers never won, because it either really worked or it really went bad. They make the playoffs every year, but what did they gain out of that? They gained nothing. They didn't win nothing. And I said that when we got him. He did not win nothing. He's proven nothing except making the playoffs in a bad Central for many years. That was the years when the Cubs were bad, and many teams were bad in the Central, and they were winning. They were making the playoffs, which is fine. And every Met fan will be excited about making the playoffs. 6 out of 8 years would be great, but that gets stale if you continue to lose in the postseason. And David Stearns has failed in those situations again and again and again. I'd hope we get there a lot of the times, but when you continue to fail, don't tell me that his philosophy works when all it does is get you into a playoffs that has 6 teams. It's not that hard, unless you're the Mets.
The most frustrating thing about this all is that if the Mets don't make the playoffs, the same thing that I said fans are saying right now is what David Stearns is also going to echo. We've got a very bright future. This team is built for sustainable success. We didn't jeopardize that this season. And it's just like, that could be true, right? That could be true, especially with what the Mets have brewing with the guys that are up right now in the rotation. But nobody's trying to hear that crap, man. Nobody's trying to hear that, right? Like, I just wish I hope if this team, and I'm saying this like as if it's an if, because I'm very down on this team right now. There's no hiding it. You can probably hear with what I'm saying and the tone of my voice. I'm down on this team. Do I think that they are making the playoffs now? I was very confident before. I have a little bit less confidence now, clearly, because, the Reds, it just seems like they are a team that's playing with a chip on their shoulder. They're playing harder than the New
Yeah.
York Mets, and it's reflective in the standings and also, just about the opposing teams and around the league, that whole notion, whatever. But, you know, I just hope that the first words out of David Stearns' mouth this season, if the Mets don't make the playoffs, is this was a failed season based off of the expectations and the standards that we had coming into 2025. Because if he says anything else than that, if he goes directly into the future and the optimism for the future, then that's going to tell me all I need to know about, this thing moving forward, right? Because you don't go out there, Rob, when we've been saying it all the time, and I'm just reiterating this in case people don't understand this. You do not play for the future. If the Mets were playing for the future, they shouldn't have brought back Pete Alonso for another year. Just
Agree.
to what? Make the fans feel good?
Yeah, that's what he did. That's
If you were
it.
committing to development about the future, okay, sure, bring in Juan Soto for 14 years because you got 13 years left of that. Okay, cool. You wasted another year of Lindor. You wasted another year of Brandon Nimmo, right? McNeil's not going to be here for much longer outside of that last contract that he got. This should have been a year where you get to it and you're seeing Ryan Clifford, who's now in AAA, right? Regardless of what he's doing. Like, you see Ryan Clifford and you really develop. That's why this year wasn't developmental. You're not
Yeah.
seeing any of these offensive guys that could be ready right now up at the big leagues. You know what I mean? You're
Well,
not. You're watching fringe guys that can be on this roster moving forward on a semi-regular basis, and Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty. You saw guys that probably have no impactful meaning on this team every day in Ronnie Mauricio next year. I don't think so, at least, because I'm not convinced of what I saw out of him. I know that he was coming back from an injury, but let's not act like he was tearing things up. He had good spurts, and he could be definitely a good bench piece, I would say, with his power, but he's not going to be an everyday player next year. Luis Angel Acuna is definitely not an everyday player. That ship has sailed. So there's a lot of like maybes about this team from an offensive standpoint. And now we have to keep watching SNY Mets videos about AAA, highlights of Carson Bench, Jet Williams, and that's supposed to be what we're looking forward to alongside the three pitchers that we got up right now. It's just a whole bunch of nonsense. And you know what? I just hope that David Stearns is honest with the fans. You got to be honest with the fans. I would respect him a lot more if he said we did not live up to expectations, and then he went into his whole spiel about the young talent.
Well, he's going to say that because he's not an idiot.
Of course.
He's going to.
Yeah.
He's going to say, "Oh, we failed." I want to hear him say he failed, and then bring up the other people because he put this roster. He didn't put the entire roster together, but you know what? He put most of this rotation together. He put all of his bullpen together, and he brought in guys either in the offseason or in the trade deadline that either got hurt rather quickly or was very, very bad. What good acquisition was made? Juan Soto, he didn't sign him. Pete Alonso, he didn't sign him. He brought Jesse Winker back. Now that wasn't nobody thought that was a bad, bringing him back. Everybody liked it. You can't predict that he got hurt, but he was injured last year as well. That's the other thing. Like he was actually injured when we got him. After we got him, he got injured. Like we all forget about that. He has been injury prone, and we did sign him. So again, we wanted him, but David Stearns got to be the. We're supposed to be the fans who want certain guys just because of names and what we thought we had from last year, bringing the guys back. He's supposed to be better than that. He's supposed to look above that. He has not done that. He thought he was a genius. He had too many reclamation projects and all this stuff, and we're living in this. Like, let's not act like, yes, the players did fail, but let's not act like it was a far reach for them to fail. It was a very small line that they had where it was either going to go good or really bad, and it hasn't been good. There needs to be an in-between with guys you bring in. You can't bring in all reclamation projects and think that they're all going to work out, because in those situations, you can't have half of them fail because it hurts your team to the point where you're in a trade deadline where you need offense, you need bullpen, you need starters, you needed everything this trade deadline. That is a failure of an offseason when you need everything at the trade deadline. When we were doing trade deadline shows, what was I saying? His expectation was we didn't need all this at the trade deadline. We might have needed one part of the team, but nothing else. When you're going into a trade deadline and you were talking about batters, you're talking about a center fielder, you're talking about bullpen arms, you're talking about starters, it's almost nearly impossible to get all of that and good players.
Which is a good point, Rob. I actually want to you are bringing up something that I really want to discuss here. As much as I've been bashing and we've been bashing David Stearns on this stream, and he rightfully deserves a lot of criticism, I want to ask you personally, and people in the chat, feel free to chime in. By the way, we do have a game today. Make sure to hit the thumbs up buttons and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But, taking a look at where this team was in 2023, when you sign an executive, right, to the likes of David Stearns, I don't care if it's at the Mets or anybody else, when you have the season the Mets did in 2023, your personal opinion, what is the timeline, the appropriate timeline for one to change this organization from what they were in 2023 to get to a point where they are continuous playoff contenders or in the playoffs continuously? Like, what is to change an entire roster? What is the appropriate timeline? Because all this being said, yes, the Mets overachieved. It's almost kind of like a curse that the Mets overachieved last year because that is now that was the bar that we were expecting at that point. But it wasn't too long ago where these guys were bottom dwellers in this league in 2023, and they had to sell off a lot of guys at the deadline in a failed season. What is the appropriate timeline for you to expect from an executive to completely flip and turn the trajectory of an organization? Because it's only been 2 years of David Stearns now.
Okay. Well, here's the problem. You signed Juan Soto. That's the problem. Like we can't wait 4 years until Juan Soto is 30 years old and then be okay with everything. When Lindor is 35 years old, Nimmo's probably on crutches right now. Here's the problem. This is the issue. The issue is that, and this is probably partly Cohen's fault. Cohen says this is David Stearns' masterpiece, right? He says that he's making him control everything. Yet we all know what happened this offseason. David Stearns did not sign Juan Soto. David Stearns did not sign Pete Alonso. You know how you would have had a trajectory of what you're really looking at? It should be, hey, you're an executive. Here's the problem. The Mets weren't so bad that David Stearns needed to be here or a new manager. They weren't. They had one bad season with Buck Showalter, and they fired everybody. That's the problem when it comes to having a team that won 101 games in 2022 and then had high expectations and failed, and it was kind of until the deadline day trading everybody. The issue was David Stearns was between a rock and a hard place because I said it from the beginning. When David Stearns took over, he should have never traded for Francisco Lindor. He should have blew up the entire team. You should have traded Nimmo. You should have traded Pete Alonso. You could have got massive amount.
Cohen or Stearns?
Cohen.
Oh, okay. I thought you said
I'm leading up to the point of Stearns because if you would have done that and you would have blew it up because the Mets were failing for many years, they weren't winning. And yeah, Pete Alonso had a lot of years left. Nimmo had a couple of years left. I understand that. But if you wanted real change, you could not build around Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo because they had 3 or 4 years left on their contract. It takes 3 to 4 years to build an organization with a GM and a new type of philosophy. It takes years. The unfortunate thing is you signed Juan Soto, you brought back Pete Alonso, you spent $25 million on Sean Manaea, and you brought Edwin Diaz back as well a couple of years ago. All of that, you can't change a roster to the way you like. This is not Milwaukee. That's the problem. And that is the issue that I had. If this was a losing franchise And they have been losing, but I'm saying like really bad over the last 3 or 4 years. And David Stearns came in here. It's a perfect scenario. This is not the scenario that David Stearns needs. That's why I thought it was a bad signing, because he is the type of guy that likes to build an organization from the bottom up. He can't do that here. He's got to start from the middle and hope it works. Because if the guys that are already here are not doing their job, who is taking Nimmo? You got to pay an entire salary for 5 more years to get rid of Brandon Nimmo. Like, it's not easy to do that. That's why I'm saying, like, David Stearns is coming in the middle of a project right now, because the Mets did make the playoffs in 2022. It's not like they've been, a failure 4 straight years, and here comes David Stearns building from the bottom up. That's where I think Steve Cohen fucked up, is bringing David Stearns in here with not changing the entire philosophy or putting his philosophy from the bottom. I think he started in the middle, and he's between a rock and a hard place. It's not all of David Stearns' fault because Steve Cohen did this. He signed him saying that he's smart, he's a genius. I wanted him for a couple of years. Yeah, but it doesn't work when you give a big contract to Brandon Nimmo and you re-sign, you extend Francisco Lindor, and then you sign Juan Soto and tell me that he's trying to put his philosophy together, because it's hard to do when most of this roster is kind of, a lot of these guys are set in positions. It's hard to do that.
Who else were the Mets realistically going to bring on outside of David Stearns? Like, let's be honest. Like, what? Like,
I agree. Well, that's why the firing of certain guys didn't make sense, because you can't tell. Steve Cohen fired how many people already? Managers. Listen.
Well, the guy who orchestrated this all was resigned, did he not?
Well, yeah, because that stuff came out, but we all know he was getting fired. Like, we all knew he wasn't sticking around. He was getting fired.
He could have been a GM or something underneath David Stearns.
Yeah, but we know Stearns was going to roll. Again, where is the GM under Stearns? Didn't he say
that's what it's leading me to my next point in the offseason. I think that we're going to start to see, and I think that's going to come from Steve Cohen. I think that we're going to see a GM underneath David Stearns, and I don't know who it is. I don't even know what candidates are out there. I could care less. I just hope whoever comes in is able to bring a voice that this whole philosophy with this starting rotation is great and all, and it's a great start. But they need to change it up a little bit. And I think that's gonna offensively, I think this lineup, there could be a change, there could be a major shakeup, and that starts with Pete Alonso, whatever. But we need to get this pitching down, and we need to figure this out. And it's a replication of what Stearns did the past 2 years and 2 off seasons, is not going to work out. So,
yeah, and listen, guys, we got 6
Stearns is not getting fired, by the way. No, Stearns nor Mendoza. I don't think either of these guys are going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And you know what? Nor should they. If you're going to talk about stability, you can't fire another manager and GM in 2 years. Like, you're not fixing anything, because all you're going to do is get somebody else with another philosophy that might want to sign everybody instead of keeping these prospects. And now you're going to have an offseason of trading all these guys that you just liked to see. And again, I'm all on board with that. I'm so sick and tired of prospects because, again, the issue with the Mets is that they have log jams in their system, and it was proven this year bringing up 4 guys that played the same position and they couldn't play every day. You didn't make a decision at the trade deadline by trading 2 of them and picking 2 guys to play. This offseason, they need to determine who's playing second and who's playing third. That's it. That's the start. They need to do that because the other guys need to be traded. You can't have top prospects being bench players. It's stupid. It's dumb. So overall, Chris, 6 games to go. We are obviously not confident in this team. There's no confidence. Like, we're going to watch this game and hope for the best. That's all we can hope for. Maybe we get lucky and the Reds lose tonight. The Mets win tonight. We're back in the driver's seat with 5 games to go. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I think we all believe is probably going to happen. But you know what? They've surprised us before. I don't know why, but they do sometimes. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. What are your final thoughts, buddy?
Unfortunately, outside of the top 4 guys, and Brandon Nimmo deserves to be a DH, and I think the Mets are going to be forced to make him one, and that's going to create problems roster-wise in the future within itself because there are other DH types in this organization that would play well there and fit that mold. And unfortunately, with where Brandon Nimmo's at with his legs and everything else that has plagued him, he is on the fast track to be a DH. But he still would be an everyday DH, at least in the first year or two, with what he's produced offensively. After that, Vientos, Beatty, Marte, McNeil, Alvarez, maybe Beatty. Out of all these guys, I can say maybe he's an everyday player. It's a hard maybe for me, but I see a half of a lineup that are like part-time players on a team, right? In terms of my confidence level in them on an everyday basis. Unfortunately, right? Especially with the production that we've gotten. So I'm not confident in this team. Yeah, we're hoping that they can surprise us, but I think that, you know, I honestly think talent aside, I still think the Mets have enough talent, right?
Oh yeah.
They have wild card talent. This team is not talented enough. The Phillies are by far more talented, I think, at this point with what they've shown than the Mets. Now, does that mean anything once the playoffs start? No, obviously we had the same conversation last year. The Phillies were more talented. The Mets came out on top, but there's something where with this team we've heard rumblings of it. We don't know if it's actually true about the cohesiveness of this team. Is there, individual groups on this roster? I'm not going to make those sort of assumptions, but all I can see and tell you all with the assumptions I can make is that, there seems to be a lack of fire at times
I
with
agree.
this team. We all see it. And everyone asks, like, what is your definition of a lack of fire? Turn on the TV, watch 9 innings of this team, and you will see in every camera angle or most camera angles, especially in the dugout, that there's a lack of urgency and a lack of fire with this team,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lack of hustle with this team. And you just that needs to be fixed first and foremost. And that's more so of like a clubhouse issue that nobody has really insight into, minus the beat reporters, etc. But we also said that last season as well, and at least for the first part of it. And we were kind of hearing a lot of stuff from people who may or may not have sources, whatever, and they ended up bringing back and running it back. So maybe that wasn't the issue all along. You know what I mean? It's very hard to as an outsider to make assumptions on that is what I'll say. So, but nonetheless, I don't have any confidence in this team moving forward. I wish I was telling you something different. Maybe they do surprise us, maybe they don't, but I'm expecting accountability nonetheless. I'm tired, Rob. I think we're all
Yeah.
tired that, with the you gotta believe. I almost hate that this is this team's slogan now. Like it's gotten to the point where, I just don't like it anymore. Unfortunately, that could be a hot take, but it's just
The
like
new,
it's an
the new,
excuse. It's
the
turned
new
from a slogan
slogan.
to an
The new
excuse.
slogan. The new slogan. Help! Exclamation mark. That's it. That's it.
Anyways, yeah, we've seen this. We've been here before. No matter what, it'll make for an interesting off season, no matter how this season ends. And that's all I can say. I mean, TBD for post game. If anything, we'll do another pregame or something tomorrow. I mean, you'll see us. We'll be around. So we'll see what happens. Cade Horton is going to be a very tough matchup for the New York Mets offense and David Peterson. I mean, I don't know, man. Just look at just like in center field, I'm like, look at the defensive just mismatch there in center field with who you got.
Sad.
Brandon Nimmo versus Pico Armstrong. Even Jacob Young was putting on a clinic with these ridiculous plays for the Nationals, dude. I don't know. I got to get out of here. Let's
Again,
get out
man.
of here.
Listen, when we have pre-games and we're not basically talking all about the game, there's major issues with the New York Mets. So with that
Exactly.
said, guys, TBD on the post game. Just hit that notification button, that bell. So if there is a post game, you'll know that it's there, and you'll get the notification for that post game. So thank you for tuning in to the Amazing Mets pregame show, guys. Hopefully the Mets win, and we have something positive to talk about tomorrow because I'm in a loss for words. I mean, this team doesn't deserve any credit. This team doesn't deserve any positivity from Mets fans at all, even though some will spin it that way.
Yep.
Have a good night, guys. Enjoy the game. And I'll see you tomorrow and possibly Chris tonight, guys. Let's go Mets and have a good night.
Let's go Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire misunderstood. Hear 'em all loud, let the